Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Through the Briars podcast. This is your host, Christian Kosovus. We're back here with episode 6, and today I've got a really interesting one for you guys, which is going to be about why modern self-help is making you worse and is inherently toxic. So this is going to be a really big one to dive into because I think self-help is something a lot of people are really passionate about, and everyone has seen some kind of self-help video on their social media at some point. No one is a foreigner to this industry. But what I want to talk about more is exactly why it's making you worse and why I think the alternative to modern self-help is classic literature as the remedy for suffering. So just to initiate, the problem that I have mostly with the self-help that's being pushed now in the modern days by all the self-help names that you know out there, all those big people, is that it's very focused on the self, which is obviously makes sense because it's called self-help, but it's worse because it puts a really big emphasis on the ego and of prioritizing yourself above other people. Now, just stay with me for a second because I know to some of you that probably doesn't sound like such a bad thing, but it's precisely that ego that destroys the person more and isolates them even further from where they're supposed to be going. I know a lot of people really look up to these self-help people, and I do too, to some of them. And this isn't before I start, I just want to preface by saying that it's not an attack on any of these self-help creators specifically, because most of them are doing it with good intention, and that's important. But I do think that the way that they orient their messages could be purified in some kind of way. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it, but I do think it's very harmful for all the people that have no idea why they should be bettering themselves, and they're being given the formulas, they're being given the how they should better themselves, but they don't specifically know why. So just to start, for example, all the videos and the books that come from these self-help creators, they make thousands of novels on why you should be bettering yourself and all these non-fiction quick grabs. You'll see them everywhere at the stores, and I'm sure people who tell you to level up will recommend you half of these novels. And there's a few, I honestly have no interest in recalling some of them, but just from memory, I know there's things like Atomic Habits, there's things like The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, or whatever that book's called, which is just, I don't know why, but there's something about that title to me personally that, and again, this is not me clowning on the entirety of the text. I'm 100% convinced that there is good things in there for you to learn, but I just think the orientation of the message is wrong. That's what I think. I'm not saying the actual essence of what's being said is bad, but it's just the incorrect orientation. But just hearing a title like that, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, like that does, to me, that just tells me that this person doesn't want to try and build that sort of community and that sort of, and better themselves for other people as well. Like, it's not just about you. Yes, it's your life and you do what you can for yourself, but life is not just about you. Like, you're not the center of the world. And it's like, yeah, I'm the main character in my own life. It's like, yes, you are, but you're also an organism in a much larger community than, just you. I think that's something that people forget as well. Like, I just hear a title like that and I'm like, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of corny stuff. You understand what I'm trying to say? I mean, again, it sounds I'm completely dogging on this book, but I couldn't think of a worse title to name my book personally. Like, it sounds very level up, and it's like, oh, if I want to level up, I'd have to not care. And it's like, yes, that's right to a degree. Like, you shouldn't let the opinions of other people weigh down on you, and you should have some level of stoicism that's just immune to the words and the fire of others. But that whole, I need to act like I don't care, like the whole nonchalance thing as well is very similar to that. It's so corrosive. it's just further damaging people and further isolating them. And it's having the reverse effect on people. All these things do, these books and these videos that you see, and a lot of them are great. I'm not denying that. Again, I'm going to keep prefacing this because it's just people are going to completely take it out of context what I'm saying. But words are incredibly powerful. And we know this. Words and actions are powerful. Motivational speeches and things like that are important. They are so beneficial for people. Kingdoms can rise and fall on words alone. And you can revitalize people's spirits by just the correct combination of words, which I think is incredibly powerful. If you actually think about that, the power that words hold it's severely underestimated. So I'm not saying that motivational speeches and all of this shouldn't be the norm. It should be. People should have others they can listen to and look for advice, but I think it needs to be done in the right way. And your advice should be teaching people how to think, because when they can think, they can make that own choice for themselves. Because if you give somebody advice and it doesn't work, you get to just kind of leave and skip off. And well, nothing bad happened to you because you're not the one who is now suffering. You gave someone advice that didn't work. They're the one suffering. You get to skip away, head in the clouds, and nothing's but me. But now that person's in a worse situation. So you should be trying to convince people, and you should be trying to allow them to find the right orientation. You should help clear the path and reveal the path to them, but then it's their choice to walk it. That's what should be done. It shouldn't just be throwing out formulas and you need to do this and you have to do this because it worked for me. And when you put everyone in that same train of line, same train of thought, you're compelling the masses, and it turns more into a cult than an actual self-improvement, self-help, bettering journey. All the videos that these people watch that come up on TikTok and all these posts people make, it gets ridiculous. I see it all the time, every day when I'm on there. And I see the videos that people like, whether they come up on Instagram or whether they come up on TikTok. They just get progressively more radical by the day. And it absolutely baffles me how these people think that it's just a good way to live as those videos are, as those videos are pronouncing to them. I can't understand that train of thought. People are liking videos where it says you shouldn't let anyone else degrade you because you're the prize. And because you're the prize, you have the justification to go and treat people awfully. What does that even mean? Like, actually just think about that for a second. How corrosive is that? And especially for people who have lived traumatic lives, who have unfortunately been conditioned to thrive on chaos, they see that and they think that it's some kind of scripture that they have to follow and say, yes, this is the missing piece that I've been missing in my life. No, absolutely not. How are you going to look at something that's so self-absorbed, so self-obsessed? Because that's all it is. The modern self-help is just obsession. It's self-obsession, and it pumps people's ego and it claims to heal them. But all it does is it puts them on this moral high horse where they're looking down on others and spitting on them and saying how self-righteous they are and how much better than everybody else they are. You're not better than anybody else. And if you live your life thinking that way, that you're more valuable than somebody else because you work hard or because you stay busy, apparently people think busyness is a marker for greatness. It's not. I can promise you busyness is not a marker for greatness. They're in their love life, they're falling for all these slogans and all this TikTok propaganda of people who are hurt and toxic and broken and refuse to do proper healing. They say things, if they wanted to, they would. And it's all this black and white thinking. And it's so frustrating because the human soul and the map of the human soul is, unfortunately now, as we are people, we are fractured souls and fractured wills that orient and that traverse through the world. And because we have fractured wills and fractured souls, we can't go with this black and white, yes and no certain thinking. And that's okay, because a little bit of ambiguity is an important thing. There are things in life that are dumbed down to a black and white yes or no with no further explanation needed. But there's a lot of things, especially when you're dealing with something as profound as orienting yourself in the right way towards transcendence and transformation and truth and living a good life and doing good and love. I mean, love, especially above all others, is the hardest thing in the world because it's more than just a feeling, it's an action, and you need to be able to understand that, and you need to understand your capacity for violence in love, and you need to understand that it's not just I feel like I love the person. It's all the things in between. It's so deep, and people think they can just reduce that to a simple binary black or white TikTok phrase because it suits their current narrative because they're completely unhappy with themselves and they hate everyone and hate everything. And most importantly, they just hate themselves. And I'm not saying this as an insult because I used to feel the same way for a really long time. And I would idolize those type of posts and that propaganda that is preached out to the TikTok world. It's so bad. And it's only once you leave it and you start investing and looking into actual good literature and actual great minds of the past who their minds were immortalized for a reason. They're famous writers and historians for a reason. They had a mind that's far better than your own, far better than mine. And they're telling us, hey, if you do this and this is going to happen. That's an important thing. Again, all this self-help does, it keeps you wanting to be the savior of your own life, which unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. You're not the savior of your own life. Because all you do when you're repeating and watching all of those same videos, all you're doing is you're surging dopamine and you're being put in a state of constant blind ignorance. Watching those videos, it makes you feel good. It's like, yep, I got that motivation now. I'm going to go up. I'm going to change my life. It leaves 5 minutes later because you scrolled 2 different videos and suddenly you've forgotten about it. But it's not just that. People like to say that, oh, part of leveling up, you got to stop scrolling so much and you got to start doing this and this. Yes, but when you replace your scrolling of mindless scrolling to scrolling and watching just a bunch of self-help clips, you're in that same paradigm. That paradigm, which is I'm watching self-help videos that are doing the exact same thing I was trying to avoid initially, which is they're surging and they're flooding my body with dopamine. They're frying my dopamine receptors. It has completely brain rotted my ability for creativity. I can't think, I can't act. And I'm in that same rut. You don't level up by replacing mindless scrolling with scrolling about self-obsession. Those things, they don't work. It is not an ample long-term strategy. It's a very, very faulty short-term strategy and a very faulty long one. It's the exact same thing with how people nowadays, they're so obsessed with hustle culture and I have to be busy, and somehow you're a superior human being to everybody else if you can have the perfect night routine, the perfect morning routine, waking up at 4 or 5 a.m. to go for a 20-mile run or to go to the gym, which these things aren't bad in moderation. And I'm not clowning on the people who do that. If you want to do that and that works for your schedule, that's great. And if that helps you stay consistent, awesome. But not everyone is living the exact same life, and you don't need to wake up at 5 a.m. to be a productive person. It's mind-boggling that people are stuck on that kind of train of thought. There is so many other things you need to be doing. You're looking at these videos, you're looking at these books and reading these books, and they're saying to you, well, if someone's disrespecting you, just cut them off because you're protecting your peace, is the most infuriating line to read. To anyone that has a little bit of emotional maturity and common sense and actually has a good orientation in the world, understands how completely stupid that is. And that's not saying that you need to tolerate bad people in your life. Of course, you need to cut bad people off when they come, but people, they don't want anyone that minorly inconveniences them. Someone who perhaps maybe not even is actually that bad, who's waking them up and saying, what you're doing is wrong. And because it hurts their ego and they want to keep their ego nice and high and stay on their moral righteousness high horse, well, they cut them off because they're burning their self-narrative of self-sufficiency and hyper-independence, and they glorify that. And this modern self-help is one of those things in life where it's not inherently bad, but when you start to idolize it and make it the top priority and pursuit of your life, it becomes bad. Evil is evil, and sin, which is obviously bad, things like murder and whatever else, those big sins that are to that high level degree. And then there's also sin, which is taking something good and idolizing it. And that's what these people are doing. And they're culminating ego, ego and pride, which is one of the worst sins there is. And if you actually understand what that means truly at its essence, you'll be able to understand what I'm saying. And then they're taking something like self-help and they're idolizing it, and it's making them more egotistical, and then they feed into each other, and that becomes an idol that they worship. And every single person worships something. You might not know what that is, and if you don't know what that is, well, you're in a really bad situation, but every single person worships something, and they have their own hierarchy of priority. And also part of the reason why people are so anxious and they don't know where to go, partly is because, well, there is so many ways they could go, but also because they have no hierarchy of priority. When there's no hierarchy of priority, you're fragmented. And when you're fragmented, you're lost and you're being pulled in many directions at once, and you're anxious. And that is how people spiral, because they have no clear pyramid hierarchy of priority. And then when you mix pride into that, the pride fragments and scatters the soul. And the only counter to fixing that is humility, because humility brings restoration to the soul and it heals that fragmentation. You might think, well, what does this have to do with the self-help? It's like the people who are worshiping these things of, I need to be working at every second of every day or else I'm not enough and I'm not productive. And you're listening to all these people who say, I work 100-hour weeks. And if you want to be successful and if you want to do well in life, because material success apparently is the only metric for a good life, according to these kind of people, well, you're going to be led into a very dark hole, because people who achieve greatness and people who achieve all of these achievements, yes, on some metrics they become successful, but on others, they're still hollow. You know this. The pursuit of an obsession or the pursuit of an object brings you far greater joy than when it's actually obtained and is yours, because the value of it's gone once it's in your hands. And that's not to say that it's still not worth chasing. Of course it's worth chasing, but that's why the people who say, I want to make $1 million by this age, awesome. They make $1 million. Good on them. Honestly, good on them. But then they're not content. They're just jumping to the next achievement. What can I do next? Because it's not truly fulfilling their soul. And that is because they have no orientation for life. They have no good understanding of what it means to transform and to be a catalyst of good energy towards the people around them and to the world. If you only think about how much money can I make, how many cars can I have by this age, what house can I have, how many countries can I travel to, all these things, people are using these to run from their problems and to run from themselves. Yeah, and it becomes their identity. And when something like that is your identity, you see it all the time with the gym community. And the gym is great. And I believe everyone should go and everyone should work out and be physically active. And your body is a temple for your soul, and your body should be strong. And you don't need to be a bodybuilder or a weightlifter, but it should be able to move, should be able to be mobile and healthy. And health is wealth. When you're mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally happy, you are at your peak. That is when life is at its best. That's when you're the most content and gratitude. And that requires the integration of all 5 of those dimensions as well. It's not just maximizing each one like these people do and then no integration. The joy and the gratitude and the peace comes after the integration of all 5 of those things, all 5 of those dimensions. Because there's a great book by Byung-Chul Han. It's called The Burnout Society. And he talks exactly about that hustle culture. And people have replaced peace and happiness and love and community with achievement and self-obsession and pride. And why that's fragmenting society, because, well, firstly, it's killing their creativity and it's making people anxious and brain rotted. And you can't heal your fried dopamine receptors. You can't heal your despondency and that emptiness for life that you feel with more scrolling and with motivational videos. You need to go and be creative, and you need to go and do things. But you don't need to slave away and sign off your life to work a million hours a week to try prove that you're a hard worker to other people. The people that make those videos, I work 100 hours a week, and what are you doing? If you don't have a certain amount of money by this age, you're behind. There is no timeline for life. Yeah, the timeline of life is something that people have made to help suppress the competition as well. And the only reason it's there is to make people more anxious and depressed and fragmented. You're not on anyone's timeline except your own. Unless you're going to a social event with other people, then you need to be on everyone's timeline. So you're not a loser who rocks up an hour late. That's a different example though. But for things like this, you don't need to have done this by 23, or you don't need to have a successful business by 30. You don't need to be a millionaire by 35. People start something at 20 and then they do it for a few years and they fail and they decide, I don't like that anymore. And they go and career change and they start again. And that process can happen multiple times. People can be successful in their 40s or their 50s or their 60s or in their 30s. You don't have to be successful at a young age to try and display your worth in society. And if your worth is tied to your success, well, you're in a very, very infernal type of place, because you're trading success for the transcendence of being and the transcendence of character and soul. And what I want to touch on now is, I will come back to this in one moment, but just to needle through to the next topic, is simply that classic literature is the antidote to your suffering, because it doesn't just tell you go work and go eat and go to the gym and go make money and you'll be happy. No, that tells you how. Self-help tells you how, but it doesn't tell you why. And this is a really big thing. If you've been with my podcast for a while, you know a big thing for me is the why, because no one knows why they should do things. Young people don't know why they should be going and changing and being better. They know how to, they don't know why. You don't tell someone why, they're not going to know. The classic literature that is out there, again, written by these fantastic minds that cannot be replaced, they force you to confront tragedy and morality and human nature and what should go in your value of hierarchy, in your hierarchy of priority, what you should value in that. They force you to reflect on your life instead of just offering these hollow formulas that temporarily work but don't work as a long-term strategy, because most of these people who end up are burnt out, they're miserable, they still have a void in their heart they're trying to fill with material things, and they get to this point and they're tired. You shouldn't need to work yourself like a dog to be happy and to have a good life and to be stable. Marcus Aurelius, one of the Greek philosophers, not Greek philosopher, sorry, one of the kings of Rome, one of the 5 kings of Rome, he said that very little is needed to make a happy life. And that's true, because life, you're at your happiest when you're abiding in simplicity. You're more grateful when you have little, and you're happier when you have little. And the only reason you're not happy when you have little is because, one, you're probably selfish and a bit bratty, and also because you're listening to these losers who are also struggling, who are not working as hard as they say they are, and they're telling you, what are you doing? You need more. More is never the answer. More makes you greedy, more makes you self-obsessed, and more does not fill the void in your heart. You are healed and you are comforted, and your joy starts to emerge when you've integrated it with gratitude, because gratitude leads to joy, and joy leads to peace in all circumstances, good or bad, tragic or amazing. You only need a little bit in life. And of course, I mean, it's hard because we see videos where consumption culture is taking root in our society like a pace that's never been seen before. People always need more. They're seeing people, they do unboxings, they do food reviews, whatever. And it's just, there's so much quantity. There's no quality of anything. There needs to be a line where you can say, okay, enough's enough. Why do I actually need all of this? No. Or am I just very materialistic and hedonistic? And you're probably the latter. And in amongst reading all of these classics, for example, let's take Fyodor Dostoevsky, The Brothers Karamazov. Phenomenal book, a work of genius, and it is probably and arguably the best book in all of history, or one of. If you don't want to say the best book, it is definitely in the top 5, probably even the top 3, arguably. And it's easily Dostoevsky's most crowning achievement, The Brothers Karamazov. It's a work of genius describing the human soul and describing the orientations you take on life will dictate the outcome. One of his main characters, one of the main brothers of the 3, Ivan Karamazov, is a very cold-hearted, he's very rational, he's very proud, he's very egotistical, he's driven, he's very intelligent. He's a very intelligent man. And I do think that in some way he is also very intellectually honest, but he's so burdened by his intellect and his pride that he can't act on that intellectual honesty. And he's kind of lives in that same route. He's very successful. He wants to idolize the world and what it has to offer. And he ends up being driven to complete madness and despair because the intellect and the pride, when it is integrated without meaning and virtue, is a one-way ticket to madness and is a one-way ticket to suffering. He goes so mad in this book that he starts to conjure up the devil who starts to play with his mind. And I think if you know what that means, I won't need to say anything else, but it's a reflection of his burden conscious. And it's that way of living that's so materialistic and so rational, it burns his mind. And it keeps his heart so cold that it freezes and he can't love. Yes, he's intelligent. Yes, he knows how to formulate the best arguments on earth. Yes, he knows how to be successful. Yes, he knows how to live a really good worldly life. But in the end, he is driven to madness and he's lost. And in his heart, deeply, the only thing that'll fill that void is love, and that he wants to love, but he can't. And that is the problem you'll have by going down this similar route with the modern self-help. And you can even like all those modern self-help videos that are about love and about how you're such a good person when it comes to love and how you want the perfect person. But you still have no idea what it means to love and to be loved. And that in itself, well, it's a very tragic position to be in. Now, for example, you take Shakespeare's Hamlet, his greatest play. And Hamlet, which I've spoken about many times, he is the reflection of the paralyzed conscience. He thinks himself into paralysis and then he cannot act, especially when it comes to decisive moral situations. He's so paralyzed by thought and he is so paralyzed in his orientation that he can't act on anything that's good. He doesn't know how to act. He doesn't know where to go. And that is probably the biggest reflection of society today. People, they think themselves into paralysis and they're being fed on top of that harmful and soul-destroying modern self-help crap. And, well, they live a life now where their soul is constantly in a state of being repetitively crushed. If you go and you read the Divine Comedy, Dante Alighieri, if you read his, the Inferno, that, what it should hopefully lead you to go and reflect on and learn about is the 9 layers of hell. And you can take that as a psychological model. I would say it's more useful as a psychological depiction of the 9 layers of hell. And if you act in those ways at each level, the more you go down, the closer you will get to the root of all evil, which Dante at the bottom had betrayal, which betrayal stems pretty much from pride and ego. So ego, pride, betrayal at the bottom, because you betray in this modern self-help, well, you betray your ability for self-transcendence. And when you violate the spirit of transformation itself, then can you be saved? Yes, you can be saved. And you can always change. Everyone is capable and open to that redemption. But the point I'm trying to make is when you cut off all when you cut off any hopes of redemption and change and transformation, it is not just a betrayal of the spirit of transformation, but it's a betrayal of yourself. And that's one of the biggest betrayals you can do, is the betrayal of yourself. And of course, there's just betraying other people for your own gain, which a lot of these modern people do with the modern self-help, because they say that you should cut everyone off and you should only focus on your success and how much money you can get, because that's going to solve all your problems. You'll be surrounded by billions of dollars, but you'll be hollow and you'll have no friends and no family around you. And that'll be a great life because, well, you can afford 10 boats. So, I mean, why would you need friends and family if you can afford 10 boats? It's very childish, self-obsessed, hedonistic way of living. And if you want more, if you want the perfect book that'll perfectly describe the situation that we're all in, then you should read The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. He is a hedonist to the max, and essentially he sells his soul for eternal, immortalized youth, and so that he can stay forever young and forever beautiful on the outside. And while he does that, he goes and he commits lots of lust. He does whatever he wants. He's very Machiavellian. He manipulates people into getting what he wants. He's very focused on worldly and material matters. And with each expression of that hedonism, slowly parts of his soul fall away and he is rotten to the core. And basically in the example of the book, when he sells his soul, this painter paints a portrait of him on the wall. And while Dorian Gray himself is now immortal, and he's young and he's beautiful and he's very manipulative and cunning, each time he steps into a moral error where he's valuing hedonism and material over love and the benefit of the community and virtue, that portrait slowly, his body starts to rot away, because that is a reflection of his soul. His soul has been trapped in the painting, essentially, and he is an empty vessel while his soul corrupts and rots away. So if you want, it's a very short read too. It's only about 200 and something pages. You want to know why you shouldn't live that hedonistic life. And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have goals to be successful and you shouldn't listen to self-help here and there, but you need to listen to it with discernment, and you need to pull what's good, and you need to actually reflect on it. You can't just go, oh, okay, well, this person said that I should get up at 5 a.m. and run and take cold plunges so I can fix my life. That's not going to fix your life by having a cold plunge or running. It'll help and it can be beneficial, but there is so much more than just the physical changes, and the more important changes that are the mental, emotional, spiritual changes that you need to make in your life. Because self-help, it tells you how to win at life, but these classics, they ask you whether life is worth winning or living. Okay, there's countless examples of books, classic books, that I can just reel off and tell you about that will benefit you in the best way. And not everyone likes reading, and I understand that, but you have to look at least to the minds of the past, because what people think as well, when they're suffering this greatly, they go, no one understands me and I'm so misunderstood, and look, here's me, woe is me. They have no tools on how to orient tragedy. And because they put their happiness in place of vain things like money and success and their physical image in the gym, or how many women or men they can sleep with and how many parties they can go to, or whatever it may be, when life's storm comes, because they're living for hedonism and happiness, when life storms come, it wipes away the happiness, because happiness is a fleeting emotion. Joy is what sustains, not happiness. And those things, material things, and this is why I don't believe in people who say, oh, we make our own meaning, because self-made meaning collapses when tragedy comes along in life. And tragedy swipes across them with devastating force, and they're left in this rut, and they're, oh, no one understands what I've gone through. And they become very weak, and they're very susceptible to so much things that aren't even that bad. We came from a very, very stoic and very strong generation that could tolerate a lot of tragedy because they had the right tools and the right orientation. We don't have the right tools anymore because no one wants to learn, and people are being fed bullshit that does not help them. and they're reading books like The Art of Subtly Not Giving a Fuck and thinking that that's healing their soul, but it's just isolating them more. Man who becomes isolated fragments his soul. You cannot heal by isolation. And there's a difference between needing to be alone for recovery and reflection and recharge, and there's a difference between wanting to be isolated from people. And if you're one of those people who says you hate other people, you need to look inside yourself, because you are sadly lacking in love and fullness of character. It's baffling. I can't understand why people are so obsessed with fleeting things that don't sustain, with material things. It cannot heal your soul. It cannot heal your soul. And if you're listening, if you've gotten this far, you might be thinking as well, why should I listen to you? You're also doing self-help. It's like, yes, I am doing self-help too, but I'm not doing self-help in the modern corny sense. I'm trying. And again, you're more than welcome to agree and to disagree with what I'm saying. And you're welcome to think that maybe I'm a hypocrite. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do, I want to give people the tools and the direction and a different lens on life, so then they can go and make the choice for themselves. I'm not saying my way is the only way, but typically in art and in this literature, they paint from the time of their being, and their art contains, whether that be poetry or literature or philosophy or whatever, their art contains eternal truths that transcend across time, past, present, and future. And one of those truths, for example, is if you isolate yourself from people, you become extremely egotistical and proud, and you hate everyone and everything, and you don't grow, and you become extremely bitter and resentful. And as a result, because you're unable to be humble, you cannot love. Dostoevsky explains that so perfectly in The Underground Man, who isolates himself. He thinks he's so much better than everyone else because he sees the corruption, and his eyes are open, but his eyes are really closed because they're tainted with pride, and he's looking with closed eyes. Okay, all these books, I promise you, what I was saying before, if you think you're so misunderstood and you pick up a classic book that is related to something you're going through, you will see that art, especially poetry, people for thousands of years have gone through the exact same situation you've gone through, and they've been able to articulate it better in a way than you ever could yourself. And when you see that, it's like, oh, someone 1,000 years ago is going through the exact same feeling that I'm going through that I couldn't articulate. It's really eye-opening. And that's why art is so powerful, especially things like poetry. All these poets, they have significantly changed their impact over time, because back then they were suffering through something, and it is the exact same feeling and moral burden that that people are suffering with today. And that's why you need to read, because you can relate, and art helps you relate to people and to stories, saying, well, I've lost this in my life, and now I'm isolated, and I don't know why I can't love people and why I'm so filled with hate. Go read The Underground Man. Go read the brothers Karamazov and look at Ivan. Go and read any classic literature book. That's what it can do for you. It's ancient cultures like that. They were aimed and structured for wisdom, not optimization, because the modern identity is built on this endless self-correction, which is wrong. Improvement becomes this, it's like a substitute for meaning. And when you achieve, there's going to be another thing that you want to achieve. So you're not at a place where you're at peace. You're not at any point where you're at peace, because it's constantly, what's the next thing? You're in a constant state of motion. You're not living. You're just chasing. And that becomes so corrosive. Yeah. And this leads me into my next thing, which is your growth requires confronting tragedy. It's not simply about ignoring it and waking up and going to the gym and posting it all over Instagram because you want to appear morally righteous and you want to appear better than others and say, look at me, I wake up early and I'm so productive, and I'm going to take a photo of it and share it to show you that I'm such a good person. Yeah, I went for a run today. I'm going to take a photo of my laptop screen of me working because I want people to know and think that I'm so much better than them. It's ridiculous. It is such a joke. It's so comical. Seeing all these people, they're acting like court jesters. You cannot, if you're performing for other people instead of trying to actually heal the fragmentation within yourself, you're not going to grow better. And liking all these posts of this corny self-help is not going to heal and is not going to get you out of that dopaminic paradigm I don't think dopamine is a word. That dopamine filled paradigm that's going to do nothing except burn you to the ground. True growth comes from moral struggle, not comfort. You don't grow if there's no tension, and that's why you need the perfect balance of order and chaos in your life. Enough chaos to rile up some tension so that you're prone to change and you can catalyze something greater than the current moment and person that you are. Because if you're comfortable all your life, you don't grow. And these people that scroll, they see the self-help and they're comfortable, but they don't change. And then they value vain things like working yourself to death as if that's somehow better, and clowning on people who have 9-to-5 jobs, or clowning on people who try and they completely disrupt and eradicate any form of creativity, which is what they're lacking, which is why they're so depressed, by the way. For a lot of people, a lot of their anxiety and depression is from a lack of orientation. They don't know why to act in the right way because they say, well, I tried to act in the right way and people take me for granted and I'm not doing it anymore. And they go be cold-hearted. And it's like, you're only reacting like that because you cannot grasp why you're doing it. And that's not an insult, but people are acting good and they don't know why. You need to ask them, what's the alternative if I don't act good? What kind of person am I going to end up being if I'm just someone who abuses other people for my own gain? What kind of benefit am I going to be to my family and to my society if I'm someone who becomes tyrannical and monstrous? But people don't ask themselves that. Avoiding pain prevents the formation of your identity. And most of these myths and these stories and these symbols, they include suffering as initiation to greatness. People are so willing to spend hours a day grinding and doing all of this work. But if you build your body to be super strong and you have a really successful business, but your heart has not changed, what's it for? What does it benefit a man if he gains the world but loses his whole soul? The change that comes from reflection will not destroy your identity. It won't destroy your future and your true identity that is always present within you, but it is going to destroy your current one because your current one is a facade of years of listening to these people preach terrible affirmations to you. You don't become better by shouting affirmations to yourself and saying, I'm enough and I'm good. You become better by orienting and being a good person and doing good. Not being a good person, sorry. Because I don't think that you should chase the thought of being good because being good leads to intentions that then become skewed by pride. You should just try to do good and not expect anything of return. You should give and more will be given to you. You should provide value to people. You should help trying to look out for your neighbors and for your friends and for your family. And you need to find an orientation for life because when you actually find that orientation for your life, funnily enough, you will start to learn more about yourself, your skills and your weaknesses. And then through that, you can learn what you want to do with yourself. A lot of people, they don't know what they want to do because they don't even know who they are. And I guarantee you, if I said to you and I asked you 3 big questions on who you are, you probably wouldn't really know how to answer it confidently because that growth, it requires letting parts of yourself die. Comfort often feels much safer than meaning. And that is why people don't want to take that next step because they're comfortable how they are and they'd rather sit and poke and judge other people instead of trying to change and trying to be better for those around them. Modern advice, it feels so empty because it's always assuming that life is a problem to solve. Life is not a problem. We are so blessed and there is so much love and art and beauty in this world that people avoid because, well, they have this myopic vision for life where it's only get money and get successful and get the biggest body in the gym. And they're just living for vanity. And then when life takes it all away, they will be empty. Your meaning can't come from the amount of money you have or the amount of success or influence you have. Your meaning comes precisely from what you provide to those around you, from how much of service and love you can provide to those around you that benefits the others. That is where your meaning can be found, because that is something that sustains. Because you could be successful, and if all your happiness and hope for meaning is in being a millionaire, and life comes and it prevents you from ever becoming a millionaire, because anything can happen. You could become paralyzed, you could lose your job, your business could be shattered no matter how many times you start it up. And if your happiness is in that, wow, you're going to end up being one very miserable and bitter person, because you have nothing else, no compass for morality. Instead, you're just going to sit on that moral high horse and judge other people. And then you will turn into the underground man. Part of, again, the modern advice, they avoid those deep existential questions. They don't say why, they tell you how. And then the why needs to go a few layers deep. You need to say why, and then you need to answer that and say why again, and why again. Why should I have something above fleeting human desires such as material success? Well, because when life's tragedy comes along, your happiness will be swept away. And if you have no moral anchor, or if you have no sustaining principles of transcendence, then you will fall very quickly into nihilism and depression and anxiety. Well, why? Because there's things that are more important than how much money you have in the account, such as orienting yourself and being a force that sustains the storms of life and is not consumed by fire. Why? And you need to keep asking. That is how you reflect and learn and grow. The happiest people that have the least, they're not scrolling on social media all day. They don't have all the cars. They have a car that gets them to where they need to go. They have enough money and they budget well and they're comfortable. They're not sitting there always trying to have the most so they can do anything at any single moment. Less is more. That is a phrase many of you will know. Less is always more. And I'm not trying to say that, again, you shouldn't chase success. You should do and chase the things that you want to chase. You need some goals and you need a plan for life to do well and to hopefully be successful. But you can't make your top priority in that hierarchy of priority vain things that do not withstand tragedy and that do not give you meaning. Stop ignoring morality and meaning in tragedy, because that positions you perfectly that classics are the deepest form of medicine that there is for the human soul, because they structure the foundation of everything in your life. Okay? When you become very proud and egotistical and addicted to all of this scrolling and all of this and all of these modern self-help bullshit affirmations and TikTok propaganda, you think it's good because you feel in line, you feel so much above everyone else who doesn't know, but you really don't know much. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And tying your identity to that of, well, I'm the prize, and if they wanted to, they would. And love is supposed to be easy. That's how you know it's true, when in fact, love is literally the hardest thing of all time. To constantly act and choose love is not easy, is one of the hardest things you'll be doing. Oh, the right person shouldn't trigger you. And if someone triggers you, it's bad. It's like, no, that person is showing you that you have things to work on and you're toxic and you've grown up in a really bad, chaotic environment that you need to attend to and heal. You don't heal by ignoring that and then make self-deprecating jokes about yourself. You should go out and you should go and fix that. And if you're always saying, well, I'm never the problem, it's everyone else needs to fix themselves because I'm so enlightened and so morally righteous, you are the problem. If you can't see one bad thing about yourself, you are in the worst possible place. You are in that ninth circle of hell because you have betrayed yourself and you have betrayed the spirit of transcendence to the point that, well, I literally can't even see what I need to work on to transcend. So bye-bye transcendence. I'm just going to keep being ignorant and egotistical and proud. Those classics, you learn human nature, the consequence of the wrong orientation. You see people in the past that have gone through what you're going through. That's the biggest benefit of all of it, is just being able to relate to other people who've gone through the same things. Some of my favorite classic books, they're freaky and it's scary trying to actually use self-help as a positive catalyst, because that requires a leap of faith into the unknown. And people are scared of that because people always want concrete evidence of what they can see, and it has to be empirical, or else it's not true. It's like, no, you need to step into the uncomfortable, and everything in life is commitment in the uncertainty. Love, jobs, you can never know anything for certain. And the people who try to know things for certain are the ones, again, who end up as Hamlet, who are paralyzed by thought. Love is commitment in the uncertainty. Work is commitment in the uncertainty. Taking a next risky step in your life is commitment in the uncertainty. And if you, for faith and hope, taking that step is that leap of faith, but also when you're taking that step, if you have the mindset of, if I go down this deep reflection path, or if I take this new job or this new path in my life, if I continue to do so and act in a good, well-established manner, you're acting in alignment with truth and with reality. And that allows you to then go and transform, but it also allows you to recognize that the world will serve those who are good and that who continue to act in the manner and with the presupposition that the world is inherently good. So that is hope right there. Hope is, despite what I move into next, I will be grateful, and I will continue to act as if the world is good, because it is. If you continue to act as if the world's bad, then you're going to be in a lot of bad situations and be very unhappy. That's an act of faith right there. It is hope and it is an act of faith merged into one. And Soren Kierkegaard kind of talks about that leap of faith as well, into the unknown, into the absurd. But you need to be able to be confident enough to take that step and say that regardless what happens to me, I will do good, no matter what. No matter how hard it gets to say the truth, no matter how hard it is to undo this briar of thorns that is in my heart, because I've let myself go so far poorly in the wrong direction for so long that I can't even identify my own sin. When you humble yourself and say, okay, I'm going to make this change, and I'm open to learning what's wrong with me and fixing that, that is when things will change and when things will go your way, and go your way for the betterment of your soul and for your future. So again, just what I want to wrap up with quickly is that I'm not dogging on all self-help, okay? Motivational speeches and all these kind of things that fall in the umbrella of the self-help, they are extremely beneficial, and we need them because words are powerful, and sometimes we need someone else to explain something to us in a way we've never heard before. But tying your identity to self-help and tying your identity to changing only the physical and not the spiritual and the emotional and the mental, is a one-way ticket to that ninth circle of hell, metaphorically speaking. Use that time now to stop obsessing over hustle culture and how many hours you can work. You're not better than somebody else because you're busy. Every human, regardless of what they do or what kind of life they live, every human has the same value. You're not more valuable than someone else, which is another lie society tells us, that you're more valuable and you get more valuable things. You get a prettier woman or a more rich man, and that makes you more valuable than everyone else. Yes, I mean in a certain sense, but you're not better than other people, and you're not more morally righteous because you have more money or because you're prettier. You're morally righteous when you sacrifice and take responsibility. And that's hard. That's a very hard thing to do. So stop obsessing over that hustle culture and stop obsessing over all of these vain self-improvement strategies. There is so much that you can do with yourself instead of watching all these videos on TikTok and reading all these useless self-help, corny books. Stop being addicted to your suffering. Stop idolizing these good things and turning them and corrupting them into something evil and tyrannical over your life. You give it power, it becomes a marionette, starts to pull the strings on your life, and it dictates and controls you. And it makes people live with that, I hate all women, I hate all men. And the fact that people think living with those thoughts and those opinions and those ways is good is just incredibly childish, so incredibly childish. Thinking you're the prize and thinking that you're the best thing there ever is to exist, and that self-obsession, it's incredible. You talk about wanting to be better people, and then all you do is like and interact with self-obsessed content. Challenge yourself and step out of your comfort zone and sit and reflect and stop bloody scrolling all the time. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up right now. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. But again, as I said, this is not an easy journey. It's a very difficult journey. Self-help stretches far beyond the physical. And I hope that all of you who are watching this can in some way discover your own idiosyncrasies and grow and not violate the spirit of transformation so that you are capable of that change and redemption. You don't isolate yourself and be driven to madness, and that you don't think so much that you force yourself into a state of paralysis. Okay, you need to live and you need to have those joys in your life too. Stop letting things like your diet or the perfect morning routine or the perfect night routine become a tyrant over your life that allows you not to feel the full joys of life, because there is so much. And again, I'm saying this, you need to have discernment and control. Dieting and not abusing substances and alcohol and not looking for short-term mating and sex options is a good thing, to not do those things. But things like, if you're going to diet or if you're going to work out, do that because it's beneficial, but don't idolize it and say, well, oh, I had too much to eat today for one day, I've ruined, and you let it ruin your day. Or I didn't have the perfect morning or night routine today, so my whole day's ruined, and suddenly the world's going to come crashing down. I didn't work 12 hours today. I only worked 9, so I'm a failure and I'm less than everyone else who's putting all of their displays of wealth on credit and trying to warp young men, especially, and young women into these false paradigms of life. Rise above that and focus on the more important things to change. I hope you guys enjoyed episode 6 of the Through the Briars podcast, and I will catch you guys all in the next one. Love.